Okay, I'm going to call the street committee meeting to order. Let's go stand for the pledge. Mel, do you mind?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. Kathy, roll.
Walter,
Here.
Carter,
Here.
Hayes, here.
All right, tonight's agenda, first item is the 2019 proposed ramp. Second item is the Oak Meadow update, Oak Meadow project update. Third would be the AEP Main Street update. Fourth would be drainage projects for 2019, and I suggested to break those up into essentially outside and inside work that would be done or proposed to be done. And then just an update on current projects, Mink various phases, however you want to call them, the Taylor Path, and then any additional project updates. So with that, go right ahead.
I just want to, before we get started, I have a hard stop at 5:45 for a cross-country kid.
Did you say 5:45?
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that that's great. I'm thinking 5:30 if we can,
That'd be
we can
outstanding.
shoot for that, that'd be great.
I have a hard stop at 5:30 then.
There we go.
Here we go.
Well, let's, I'm gonna suggest that we just get a quick update on the current projects first. Let's go that route first. We'll go with the Mink, the Taylor, and any additional projects you guys are working on right now. Can you give us a,
Okay, we'll
Quick
start out with the intersection, so that would be Mink Phase 3. That is, we are waiting on AEP power. As soon as we get power to that, those will go through the specified 10-day burn period. That means the signal heads will remain bagged, so they'll be covered. And during that 10 days, they'll run through a normal cycle, and that way we can check the logs for any faults, make sure everything is operational. And once that is done, those will be ready to go into service. There's just a little bit left on that project as far as they're going to grade out the lot where the house was, just grade that off and seed and straw it. There's a small amount of pavement work to be done on that northeast corner as well, just to bring that up to level. I've not heard when they're planning to do that. The signal's kind of been the forefront of everything right now. And that is more or less it on that project, unless you have other questions.
Go ahead.
Does that include, opening the road with the railroad tracks, or is that another phase?
no.
That's the other phase.
One phase, okay.
yes, there's multiple phases in that phase. Multiple parts in that phase, I should say.
So that
Yes.
phase is projected to be completed.
Okay, so are there any more questions on the Phase 3? just the
Only,
intersection?
so are you waiting on AEP? They haven't given you a date yet on when they can get
They
that
have
power?
not.
Okay. I know they were delayed with hurricanes and so forth, but
Right.
I just wonder if they had gotten anything back to you yet.
I have not heard anything. I
Okay.
will double check on that.
And then any striping issues, is there anything with temperatures falling and as we get closer and closer to fall?
So on that intersection, I think all the striping on that intersection is done with the exception of the edge line on that northeast corner. So they'll probably have to restripe that. If we don't get to that this year, I don't think that's an
Okay,
issue.
they can do it with the other phase,
Right.
2, 3, 5, 7, and 9.
Correct.
All right, I don't have any other questions on that. Any, Suzanne? Any
No.
questions? All right, go
Okay,
ahead.
so switching to Mink Phase 2, which is broken up into 3 sections. So this year, they're doing sections 1 and 2, which is pretty much from what's closed now up to Columbia Road from the tracks. That is progressing on schedule. They intend to have that back open roughly the end of November. So that'll, the underground work is mostly complete. They're working on getting the road base in good condition. I know they have had to undercut some areas where the base was no good. That was all planned, and it's pretty much been working out pretty close to planned quantities on that so far. So that, they will get the road in, everything except the surface course. We're gonna wait to do the surface course until everything's done. But that should be open back up around sometime at the end of November. And then that'll remain closed December, open. So no work going on for December, January, February, March. It'll probably be April before they're able to get back in. And then close that next section, which will be from Columbia up to the bridge just north of Havens Corners. And get that project finished up. I think on that section, there's only, by schedule of 35 days of work, I would anticipate it'll take them 2 months to get that all completed once they get back though.
Mid-July would be a good estimate
I would say that, yes.
for finish course.
Yeah.
How, utility relocation, everything done with that? Are they,
Everything is done in the first 2 sections. There's some utilities that need to switch onto poles, like AP's finally got their poles moved. Spectrum and those guys need to move their
Century.
facilities. There should not, and that's all in section 3, there should not be any issue with that stuff getting moved out of the way by the time Shelley Company, ODOT's ready to get back in there to do section 3.
okay. Any questions on section phase 2, parts 1 and 2, and future 3? All right, great.
Okay, Taylor Road, the closure on Cleveland Road. We did run into a little bit of an unexpected scenario there. They're replacing the culvert that goes north to south across Cleveland Road and extending it so that the bike path can go over it. When they took that out, it was discovered that there's I think it's 18-inch pipe that comes in from the west that was below the flow line of the existing pipe. So it was mostly clogged. We discovered that, and there was no way to tie it into the new pipe because we couldn't lower the new pipe. So what we ended up doing was running that pipe, putting in a structure, running that pipe south and outletting it on the south side of the road next to the one that we plan to replace. So there's a little bit of time and material work on that, but there was really no other solution that we could come up with to get that to drain as it should have.
Is it active?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we even looked at trying to tear that out and relay it, just using in-house, but we couldn't, the grade wasn't there, we wouldn't have been able to get high enough to get out of the pipe on the north side of the road. So there's a little bit of extra cost expected with that. But otherwise, the 2-week closure of Cleveland Road is tracking on schedule. I don't think that held them up. They told me it didn't when I talked to them on Thursday. So that shouldn't be an issue. I will make sure and get an update on the Cleveland schedule. But it's tracking on time as far as I'm aware.
All right.
And what's the date that it's anticipated to be back open, if it's on schedule?
It should be back into open next Monday. Maybe this Friday, but next Monday is what's planned.
That's for the opening of Taylor.
Cleveland Road,
okay.
opening back up, correct.
And then the closure for Taylor itself.
The closure for Taylor, I was honestly a little surprised. I thought we were gonna move it till Thursday and Friday, but Spenco and the guys decided they were gonna get it done today, and they did. So it is, the new culvert's in, we poured the concrete this afternoon. We're opening it back up at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon.
Any problems?
Not specifically, but not with that itself. So once again, they found another 12-inch culvert that comes in from the north on the east side of the road that was lower than the extension of the new culvert there. That one, I think Jason's gonna take some shots on that, dig it up, take some shots. We think we can chase it back a little bit further and raise it up, and then have the contractor tie it into to the new pipe that's gonna get extended for the path to go across it. So there will probably be a little bit of extra cost on that, but most of it we'll take care of ourselves, so it shouldn't be much.
Okay. Any other questions on Taylor Path? I guess Taylor Path itself, how are they, as far as the schedule goes, how are they coming along with the path, whether it's the sidewalk or the path, it's the asphalt path?
In general, that one's tracking on schedule. We met on that here last week, the week before last, and everything was moving according to schedule on it at that time.
Great. Any questions on that? All right. Any other additional projects?
Outside of the ones that we have listed on here, nothing major other than the 2018 ramp. Work is scheduled to start next week on that. So we'll be marking out, I was planning to mark out tomorrow, but with the rain, that's probably not gonna happen, so it'll be Thursday. And they did not tell me where they're going to start yet. I will give them a call probably tomorrow, see what their plan is, so we can put public notice out before you.
You said next Thursday for that to start?
Next Monday.
Next Monday.
Next Monday. And we did ask them, to see what they could do to accommodate the school there where we're, paving from Broad Street to the tracks on Summit. I asked them if they'd be open to doing work on Saturday. They said that's a possibility. What they might do is go in and mill on a Friday and then pave on a Saturday, because they could mill that out between 9 and 3 and stay out of the school traffic, and then just pave on Saturday.
That would be a great advice for them.
Either way, they said they will make sure that they are only there between 9 and 3 if they're there through the weekdays, and then on the weekends, they're obviously more open.
Any coordination with the school for that, at least letting them know that, hey, don't have parents show up at 2:30? I just noticed that I see a lot of traffic starting at about 2:30, and they're starting to line up, essentially.
Okay.
That they should know that there's gonna be at least some problems getting there.
We will definitely let them know, and see if there's any other input on, hours restrictions for people coming in.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that? I know in the 2018, we had talked about going up to Headley Road and doing some work ahead of the ramp. We had some patching and so forth. Is that been able to get, I'm sure the weather has not given us any availability to do that, but.
So no, we did do the 6 culverts that we needed to on this section. Of course, we put in the budget for next year to do, there's another 5 culverts on the northern section that we're planning to do early next year ahead of the ramp. But all we've had a chance to do is pothole repair since then. We actually have some Durapatching and some paving that we're wanting to get to this year. But between the rain and working on storm projects, we've kind of made that a priority this year. We haven't got to a lot of the paving, other than just maintaining potholes.
All right. Any other additional street drainage projects that are going on that we need to get an update on?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Let's go up to the 2019 proposed ramp,
Okay?
which we did get your information, thank you
Yes.
on that.
And so I also provided the ramp from 2018 with the 5-year forecast, the color-coded spreadsheet. That one, just want to note that it was last updated in September of 17, so there's nothing new on that yet. Still working on trying to do the assessment, going around and driving all the roads and getting conditions on them.
Yep. Can I just ask, stop you there? Okay, so the question I guess I would have is, when do you normally do that? I mean, obviously, we have the 2018 in progress now, we're getting ready for the 2019 to be in the budget. I'm assuming you've looked at these streets already, but as far as the other ones that are on this 5-year projection and then some, when do you typically try to do that?
Well, I've only done one so far, and I was able to get to it earlier in the year when I did it in 16. So this was completed by about September of that year, I believe. I have not been able to, I've started, I haven't been able to complete doing the drive. It takes a long time to drive all of our roads and look at them. So it's, I haven't got that completed yet.
Okay.
I'm hoping to do that here by the end of October, have that complete. I doubt I'll be able to complete it much before that.
Okay, go right ahead, Noel.
Okay, and then I also gave the additional work assessment that we've done at the first of this year when we were looking at the 2018 ramp, just for reference to what I've shown in the summary of the 2019 ramp preview is somewhat in line with the ramp, but there's also been some things that have jumped up. So the first one, Headley's Mill Phase 2, which we talked about for the past year, just doing the second part of Headley's Mill. So that, I showed under all 3 options, but there's no change in the options there. That's pretty much just doing the same treatment that we're doing this year, which is mill and fill of roughly 50%, and then going through and doing the chip seal after that, and of course doing the culvert repairs outside of the scope of the ramp prior to that. The second one is is Dixon Road, which we did as an alternate for this year's ramp, which was obviously very expensive, not gonna fit into our budget. So I gave two options on that one. One is doing a full mill and fill, and the other one is doing a leveling course and a chip seal, which was a little bit cheaper. And being that a lot of the problem up there is rutting and potholes, and the surface isn't quite as degraded as what Headley's Mill is, I think we could get away with a leveling course and a chip seal. So something to consider.
Okay, so just a quick question. On the previous ramp evaluation, you had a couple different options on there, and they were, quite a bit less, 150,000 versus the 289 or 229. Am I looking at the same? You see on page 2?
Yep.
You have Clark State to McGowan and McOwen, and then Havens Corners to the north, I assume.
Yes.
And you broke it up so that some of it was a leveling course and some of it was a chip seal.
Mm-hmm.
Has that changed, your evaluation changed since then, that we need to do all of the mill and fill or all leveling course and chip and seal?
It's definitely gotten worse than when we did this. And honestly, I haven't had a chance to drive that one as part of this. I know it needs
I
something.
drive it twice a day,
Okay.
and it is worse, there's no doubt, there's a lot of
definitely
traffic up there, it's definitely worse.
So I've seen it a couple times, but I haven't gone through it, I guess, with the fine tooth comb that I would for the ramp. And on what we had from before was no leveling course on the one part, and I think I also increased the depth of the leveling course. That, as I've experienced leveling courses more, we tell them a ½ inch, but it almost always ends up being 1 inch to 1.5 inches just because of the irregularities. So I did increase the volume of the leveling course on the one section and then added it into the other section.
Okay.
So that's part of the additional cost. Honestly, I don't know if striping was included in the original cost either. So that has added some cost. And let me look real quick here to see if there's anything else specifically. One of the things that we could potentially throw out is I added in a line item for reconditioning the shoulder. That's something that we can do in-house, basically just putting new berm on. We're not as efficient or effective with our berm as contractors are, since they have the equipment to do that, but that's something that we could certainly look at non-performing to have a little bit of savings.
Experiencing that road, it's pretty narrow, and getting the berm on there immediately would probably be extremely valuable to just protecting the road in general, but also make it safer, just because it's a tough one, because of its width.
Well, and another reason in favor of that is what was done on Corder Road before my time was they chip sealed over the berm, and that really seems to help hold that berm together. And if we did it at the same time, we could increase the width of the chip seal to cover the berm and potentially have a longer lasting repair.
That's a pretty good idea. Okay.
Next one, Park Street, 3-inch mill and fill. So that one was on the ramp that we had before in 2019. I think that's still a good idea. Obviously, we wanted to wait till the police station was done. We were concerned about what was underneath of the asphalt out here, and wanted to see how it held up during construction. As they cut across it here the other day, we found that there's an 8-inch concrete base that's in pretty good shape. So we think a 3-inch mill and fill would be adequate to get this road addressed and get it taken care of.
Okay.
Next, Mill Street. This one we've had on the ramp for the past 2 years, but there's water line work, and Nate did get part of his water line work done so we can get the intersection at Township, Creek, and Mill completed. But he didn't get all of it done where we can do all of Mill Street, so that was part of this year's that we're probably gonna end up non-performing because the water work isn't done. I'd hate to repave it and then Nate go in next year and tear it up. So he's planning to get to that early next year so that it is ready for the ramp for next year. One thing I did not include on that was suggested is the sidewalk on the north side of Mill Street is in pretty bad condition, and it's, the paving that's happened there before, I think it's just been overlay after overlay, and the pavement's pretty much even with the sidewalk now, so something we were considering, and I have not had a chance to update on here, put cost in for, is to replace that sidewalk on the north side, just from Broad Street to Township Road, so it's not terribly far, it can't be more than about 500 feet, I'm guessing, so I can add a cost in there for that if that's something we wanna consider. We might be able to use fee in lieu funds for that. I don't know what the balance of the fee in lieu of will be.
I'm confused. Did you
Yes.
say Broad to Township?
I think I did say Broad Township, and I meant Main Township.
Okay, that's what I was like, what? So starting at Main, all the way to Township to where the pool is, okay, and that's not the residents' cost, that would be the city, is that correct, or would that
If we did it as part of this, that's what I'm proposing, yes, that we could do it.
do it all together?
Because normally you've got
It's
6-inch
built
curb,
up.
it's
There's
built
no
up there.
separation
There's-
really between the two.
I just didn't know, because
Yeah.
if it's residents, then we need to obviously do something else.
On your Mill Street, what, do you have, I'm looking here real quick, do you have the length of your Mill Street?
Actually, yeah, it should be on there. 575 feet,
So you're looking at 575 feet of sidewalk in some fashion,
yes.
you know, you're looking at,
So we got some excavation and then some sidewalk, yeah.
you got demo first. Okay,
$5 a square, is that low?
what do you think it is?
I haven't looked at the sidewalk, I guessed $5 and looked at Scott to see if that was.
That's probably,
I think it
yeah,
was-
probably $20 a foot. Is
Okay.
it 4 or 5? It's probably 4 foot down there, right?
It's probably four, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
pretty
so
sure it's
20 bucks a
4 foot
foot.
sidewalk.
Yep.
What's that? So it would need to be 5? If you're replacing, would it have to be? Okay, so it would need to be 5 if we're replacing it according to ADA.
So I wonder if we, you know, I don't know if that's possible to do or not. In some places, it's pretty,
It's pretty
Very
tight.
narrow,
very narrow through there.
especially on the, would you do the corner? Did you turn it?
That guardrail.
There, at Township, there's a curb ramp there, we would replace that curb ramp because I'm not sure that it's compliant.
Mm-hmm.
And then at Main, it already kind of wraps around right and stops right there.
Mhm.
So just if you went to 25 a foot, you're looking at, well, it was 11,000 for 20 a foot. So,
Okay.
you know, you're gonna add another $5,000 to it,
So,
or, you're gonna add another 2,500 to it, so 14,000 to it.
Do you have to put the dots in also? Like,
dots.
you know, like the intersection, like when you go, it's like the red pad?
The detectable warnings on
Yeah.
curb ramp.
I call them
yes.
dots. They're dots.
Yes.
They're like little
They're-
pieces of
they're-
candy. Now, do you see it different?
If they were colored different colors, maybe in
Yeah.
lines, maybe.
They're like little Necco wafers.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's the teacher
The
version.
domes, yeah.
Colorful dots.
They're called detectable domes.
You call them what you want. So is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And then you have on here, Pat Haven Drive.
So, yeah, and Pat Haven Drive is the one that, it was color coded in purple previously because it, thought it needed a full reconstruct. And if we have to reconstruct that, because the curbs are in pretty bad shape. If we had to reconstruct it, that's gonna be very expensive.
Does that say 650 there under the purple?
It does.
Okay, I wondered.
It does. So I would throw that in here as an option because Pat Haven is in pretty bad shape. It's one I've got numerous calls about, and if you've driven on it, it's in pretty bad condition. So I threw an option in here to do, I'm trying to find my option sheet on here. Did it make it in here?
You did on the option 3.
Oh, there it is. It's not my favorite solution, but it at least gets us a new surface course, would be to mill 1.5 inches out, put an intermediate back of 1.5 inches, and then put an 1.5 inch surface course and pave into the gutter. 'Cause that's about the only way we're gonna hold that together without replacing the curbs themselves. And if we add the curbs in, it gets really expensive. So it would, we'd still have 4 inches of curb reveal. So from that aspect, you know, we'd still have decent drainage and it would fill those voids and hold that together. It would probably last for a good while, you know, knowing that intend to 20 years, we probably would have to do a reconstruct, because I don't think paving over that again would be a good solution. So it's just something I threw in here to consider. Obviously, if we throw that in here, it takes, with all those others, it takes our budget to 700,000, assuming option 2 for Dixon Road, which is more than our proposed budget. But I do have some news on the budget that I wanted to, I don't know if it's really news, but it would be news to you guys to share. If you want to do that, I could do that right now to give you a better idea of what.
Let me ask you a question about the Pat Haven. I've been down Pat Haven, so I don't know what kind of, when you say it's in bad condition, what exactly is happening to it?
A lot of potholes, a lot of fairly large cracks, pretty rough surface.
You think this is a concrete base, or is this a,
That's that's the one thing I don't know is what's
Okay.
underneath of it. It was a preliminary thought just because I knew Pat Haven is one that we should probably address sooner than later. It's an option.
right, the question I was gonna ask is, what's our option here? As far as potholing, or going in there and patching some potholes and trying to crack seal to try to Band-Aid it till, what, 2-3 years from now?
It's been Band-Aided a lot already. So and we could continue to do that, but we're getting close to the point where we certainly wouldn't want to hold out more than a couple of years to do that, whatever we decide to do. And in the meantime, we could look at getting some cores on that to see what the buildup is. There's no rutting and there's no failed sections, so I think the base is okay. It's just that the curbs are in bad shape and the roadway itself is pretty potholed and cracked up.
Okay. Before you get to the good news, I guess, or the new news, there are a few other items on here that didn't make your suggested options.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that those are ones that you've downgraded maybe or I guess the way to ask this is, were the ones, for instance, Highland Hollow, you had as a 2019 chip seal.
Mhm.
You had another one at the Summit Ridge Heights,
Mhm.
microsurface. Those, are you finding those to have sustained less damage or are in better condition than what was assumed? You know, and granted, this was a year ago that you put this together, but are they in better condition than you thought they would be at this time?
Well,
Or is it that the other ones have just absolutely jumped ahead of them?
I think it's more the latter. So on Columbia Road, going from Mink to Broad, that one, I'm sure you drive that one too, it's got a lot of crack seal on it. We've held it together pretty well with all that crack seal. I think it does need a chip and seal, but I don't think it's a higher priority than any of these other ones because it's still holding together fairly well. Mill Street, from the bridge to Main, which would be basically from Columbia over to Main Street. It hasn't really gotten much worse. I thought it was gonna deteriorate quicker. It has not. It's not in great shape, but I think it'll hold together for another year or two as well. Refugee Road, I had that in for a micro surface. I don't think that a micro surface is gonna get it done on Refugee Road. And I believe this is the section between Columbia Road and Etna Parkway, because west of that is in decent shape.
Yeah.
And that's where they just did the widening. We've done some, ahead of that, we did some drainage repairs ourselves, and that widening has some drainage repairs with it, so I think that's gonna help a large portion of that. The remaining portions are not in good shape, but I think that they are not a higher priority than the ones we've got listed. And let's see, what else do we have in 19? Summit Ridge Heights. So I'm trying to remember exactly what that one is, or which one that is.
I was trying to figure that one out myself. I
Uh,
don't know. Okay, well, you answered the question. I was
Okay.
just seeing how you were prioritizing, at least the option that you presented, how those came to be higher priority. And I would tell you Refugee Road is in places, will probably need extra work. in-house work, whatever, and I don't know if that's our responsibility, if that's Aetna, or if it's both of ours. Does it matter on which side of the center line it is?
The way that's broken up is a maintenance agreement per sections, so Etna Township has from, moving east to west, from 310 to Columbia. And then we take over from Columbia to, let's see, we go past Etna Parkway to about 500 feet west of Mink Street. And then they have the remainder from that portion to Summit Road.
Okay, so it sounds like we have some, there probably, I can think about 3 or 4 places that I would say are as bad as anything on this list,
Okay.
including Dixon, are that bad.
And you're talking between.
Only because they've been,
Yes.
yeah, mainly between Columbia and Etna Parkway.
Etna Parkway, yeah.
It was the construction road. I mean, it was the construction, blew it up.
It certainly didn't help. I think it was in bad condition beforehand, and the drainage out there was a big
It's
part of the problem. So I guess I'm hoping I can do some more drainage work over there, see if I can find any other remedies maybe next year, and then get back to Refugee Road after that.
Okay. So, give us
So,
your new news.
The scenario on the budget, so when we look at the budget, it's obviously a snapshot in time, and that snapshot was roughly a month ago. When we look at it insofar as the carryover balance and what will fit in as far as projects and the budget as a whole. At that time, since then, I have closed for whatever reason, the ramp, and one other thing, and that accounts for any encumbrances that are out there, and any money that's encumbered at the time. So since that time, the last year's ramp, the purchase order for that was still open for whatever reason. I thought it had been closed, but it hadn't. So the budget at that time didn't reflect that 150,000 savings we had then. And then I was able to also close a number of other purchase orders for a total of around $200,000 plus or minus that doesn't show up in our budget model and carryover balance. So that's some good news there. The other, it's kind of a nuance, but with Oak Meadow, we booked that, well, it's a total of $750,000 for 2018. 65,000 of that's from the fee in lieu of, so it's not coming from the street fund. But we booked that for 2018, and with where we're at, we haven't got the easement yet, so we haven't been able to put that out to bid yet. We're not sure if it's gonna be 2018 funds or not. So I went ahead and booked it again in 2019. So we're showing that roughly 650,000 in both 2018 and 2019. So our carryover balance on our budget model reflects all that money being spent in both years because we needed to have it out there in case it didn't go this year. So when that actually all comes off and we figure that out, there's actually gonna be a much larger carryover balance. All that to say that, if we wanted to look at putting that additional funding, because, we shoot for that 25 to 35% carryover that we're not touching. With all that in there, it's probably gonna be closer to 40% is what we're carrying over. So we would have, 5 to 10% to potentially put back into intersection or roadway improvements. So if we wanted to try and get a little more aggressive with next year's ramp or with other improvements, that money might be able to be used for that. Just wanted to, throw that out there, plant that seed.
Okay. Are there, I guess my question initially would be, other than Pat Haven, I mean, if you were, let's go down the hypothetical here. If you go down your option 3, excuse me, which is not including the more expensive Dixon Road option, but if you were to go down that option, you're saying that there could be another 650,000 to put into this budget, or what? I'm not sure I understand the number you're may have as carryover, or not carryover, but in general, what you might be suggesting as an increase.
So the budget was based off of having that 650,000 and that 200,000 less. So when we modeled the CIP projects and all of our budget, it was based on having basically $850,000 less than what we're actually going to have because of the money that was encumbered that we freed up because of those purchase orders, and because we had to book Oak Meadow twice.
So we haven't seen the budget yet, so I don't know what that does to your line, essentially what that does for your balance line.
I'm pretty sure we had going into, we had somewhere between 30 and 35% as a carryover balance. We were on the high end of the carryover balance.
With these assumptions as they are. With the 850.
Assuming that we did not have that money, correct. So when we add that back in, it's going to jump up probably to 40%. So, and that's higher than typical.
Okay. So there may be some items on here that you would suggest that we tackle as we go down this road for 2019. No pun intended.
So whether they be specific paving projects, whether they be looking at our, I put it in the CIP project for intersection improvements. We were looking at doing a study, and maybe it's trying to get some of that moving faster, or maybe it's the Taylor Road Drainage Project that we looked at doing the study at next year, but I don't think engineering was included. Or maybe it was engineering next year, but not construction, maybe trying to fast track something like that. Just saying that there is additional money potentially available for maybe adding a little bit to all of them.
Okay, good.
So, before we move forward with all of this and we start talking about extra money and what we could do extra, we need to address the situation with the school district. And we need to talk about the intersection improvements that apparently, must be done for, the school to be able to build. So, I think that is a substantial discussion that we need to have. And where do we start? Is that, is that a traffic study? Is that a joint meeting with the school district? Is that us carving out a piece of our ramp? What step do we take for that? Which
Yeah.
intersection do we start with?
Well, I even go faster, go further with that is, what are our estimates for it? What do we think it's gonna cost? What is, obviously we don't know exactly, because we don't have a study that says, hey, here's what it has to be, but at least some ballpark figure of what, and does that get added to, an overall list that we can all sit down and actually evaluate?
So from a public service standpoint, the CIP project that we're putting in for next year would be looking at studying all the intersections, so doing capacity and safety analysis to prioritize all the intersections. I know specifically on my list were, Broad and Summit, Havens Corners and Summit, Watkins and Broad. Those were, as far as signalized, those were some, I guess one of them's not signalized, those were some of my top 3, Taylor and Havens Corners. And then I think we obviously need to look at Cable and Summit as well, and prioritize those and look at where they would fall from the city's perspective. And then I guess not to tiptoe around anything, maybe that's not my decision on which one we actually do first, and if it's one of the school ones, then maybe I'm glad I don't have to make that decision.
Right, it's just the same, I think it falls kind of bit like the ramp does. We actually have to know what the cost is and know the severity, I guess, or the requirement or the need for those improvements. I think that's where we start. If that's what you're asking, I think that's where it starts. Just like we would if we were evaluating roadway improvements.
Well, to tie this back to the ramp, maybe what we can do is, obviously we can't make those decisions, and I'll also throw out that Jamie's not gonna have all the information back for running September to even show the money that we've saved that's gone back to the bottom line by reducing those encumbrances. That won't be ready for the budget meeting, so maybe it's a little early to make any decisions based off of that, but I wanna make sure you had all the information. And maybe we can throw I can prepare a couple more of these where alternate roads that we think would be adequate or potential to throw on to the ramp if we wanted to do that, and we could have them designed as alternates. That way by the time we have all that information, we can see if it's something we would want to add, or we have a list to choose from.
What I think some of the other questions that go along with it is, let's just use an intersection out there that we all know is a problem, Summit and Cable. What is if the budget for that is 1.5 million, well, 850 goes a long way, but it doesn't cover all of it. So that's, I think, some of the thought process that has to go through is how do you get to finishing, how do you get to getting that intersection done, or any of the intersections done? Is there ability to go out and get some grants for it? So this is all about a discussion about what you can do in the next couple of years with the limited supply of money. Even if it is some extra money, it still has to be evaluated for that, so.
A question.
Good.
Do the roads have to be completed, like the intersections have to be completed before a school can get approval to be built? Like, do we have to as a city or whatever, complete the intersections and have them ready to go before the schools can move forward with building? Or does there just have to be an approval, an agreement, that we agree to?
I think it's faster to build a road than it is a school. They take quite a long time to put.
Well, and I know that, and I understand that, like, can the school district begin to move forward with building a school while we're moving forward with building a road?
I would
And
think
just
so.
so that, because it takes so long for them to build, that getting things started for them is, like, imperative.
I would think so. Go ahead, Mel.
I think the idea was always, with any of the roads that we've talked about, was making sure that we worked in conjunction, so we weren't backtracking and
Right,
double
that's why we
spending
started
somewhere. So, we were working together so that things could go in at the same time, instead of having to go back and correct and tear things up and then redo and just waste money. So that was the initial, jump into all of this with all of the intersections that we've talked about on the west side
For a
of town, period. Not just the intersection where the school district, where the school's trying to be built, because there's a number of intersections on that side of town that are,
And that's,
and in fact, just driving them every day, I would say Summit and Cable is not the worst one, by far, not the worst intersection. So,
Yeah.
I think that, that needs to be the forefront of our discussions.
I agree, Mel, with the side that I think that a good idea of what the costs are is gonna make that discussion able to be had, whether or not you have to partner with, for instance, if you partner with the schools for funding purposes, or if you go get state grants for whatever the case, you might be able to get into a funding or a grant, time them so that you can get grants for it correctly. I think that goes a long way to making the discussion work.
I think we need to do that with urgency.
I agree.
Okay. Well, that discussion put aside for just a moment, for the 2019 ramp, are there any comments that we want to provide Alan on this? Anybody have any comments on at least the list of items or option-wise that we want to provide comment on?
No.
Okay. I don't either. I think that, in my opinion, the sidewalk on Mill Street is imperative to replace while we're there. It would be, I think it would be ridiculous if we didn't do it while we were there paving. And then secondly, as far as the Dixon Road fix, that road is heavily traveled. So I think the higher level of repair is probably better than the lower level of repair. So I guess I'm throwing out a comment that I think the 289,000 should be the choice that we make, including the shoulder being put in by the contractor and then chip seal. That's cheap. That's a good way of protecting that road and making the berm actually last. Those are my comments only. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but that's the way I guess I would look at it. And if we have some extra money in the available, Pat Haven sounds, I haven't been over there, I'm gonna go look at it. It sounds like it's imperative that we do something there, otherwise we may be spending $650,000 here real soon, rather than 131.
Well, and just a little more information, Kathy just passed me a note here that Louis thinks that the base is not that great on that road, but that's something we can certainly take a course
Well,
in.
that's a big piece to that
See what
puzzle.
we have, yeah.
We could easily, if that thing were to fall apart, it's 5 times the amount, for repairing it,
Right.
so.
And on Dixon Road, we are making drainage improvements, right
It's all you
now.
guys out there, yeah.
So, and we've got some other ones planned, ahead of this I think a big part of that problem with the road is it just doesn't drain well, and if we can get that taken care of, these improvements won't be in vain.
Okay. Is it, I don't think you need anything from us as far as motion, I think you're just looking for comments, correct?
Looking for comments, yes, and, obviously the schedule on this, we wanna try and get this to, have an engineer start design this year, to use the money that we have in this year's budget to get them on board. Ideally, we'd probably bid out, December, January, February timeframe, which is what we're shooting for, so I'd say within the next month or so, we'll probably wanna try and hone this down to something that we can give to the consultant to give us a proposal on, so that we can get them moving. But, I think we have some time to think about that.
Okay. Do you need anything else from us right now?
No.
Okay, great. Any other questions on that? Anybody? All right, AEP Main Street update, anything on that easement?
BJ has been handling that, he's been working with AEP, but I have not heard any updates on that. I think the last time I talked to him was about a week and a half ago, and we have not got anything. AEP was coming up with options to, give those residents, an A or a B choice, A being the small pedestal in the front yard, or B being a pole in the backyard. And I have not heard any results from that yet.
Okay. Any questions on that item? Anybody? All right. Oak Meadow update.
Columbia Gas is out there now. Their progress is tracking fairly well. Shouldn't be any issue with getting that wrapped up here in the relative near future, well ahead of our improvements. BJ has been trying to get with the resident that we need the easement from. We did meet with him one time. He wanted to save a bush that's out there, so we rerouted the line and the easement there. And it's been challenging to get with that gentleman. I think he has odd work hours, so him and BJ have been trying to work that out. We did prepare the new easement for him to look at, and we just haven't got his eyes on that and got an agreement yet to finalize the paperwork. And then
Good.
the other thing is, after the last council meeting, a couple of the residents, I don't know if Meadow did approach me again about the sidewalk versus path. There was some concern on that. So I told them more or less what we've talked about so far. I think the argument was brought that it's gonna be less of a value for their home values. I did not get a chance to discuss this with them specifically, but it seemed like from the tone of the argument, they were comparing that to a sidewalk would make the value higher versus what an asphalt path would make it. So I don't think it's talking about current conditions. It seemed to be talking about the value of future conditions. Because I think obviously with what we're doing with the road and the drainage is gonna increase the value out there for everything. So they asked what their recourse was. I told them that was really above my head at this point. I know that some of them had talked to street committee or council before, or addressed them before. They'd said something about getting a lawyer involved. I said they could certainly do that, but I don't think it's gonna amount to much because that is all within the public right of way. I said perhaps a petition, if you had enough people sign something and brought that before council, that might have some effect. I was just trying to, think of options that they had, but there certainly seems to be concern with the path that was brought to me once again. So I wanted to share that information.
Any questions on Oak Meadow? I know, I'm gonna address that because I know that's an issue here, and I have not spoken with the Oak Meadow residents about this, but I know that it has been brought up. The question I guess I would have is, in the, let me use a word that nobody likes, assessment, but that has been something that's been done previously for people who want sidewalk. The concern I guess I have for it is that you'll have people that don't want to be assessed. And then rightfully so, I understand, they may not want the sidewalk, they may not want the leisure trail. or the bike path, or whatever you wanna call it, the asphalt path. But regardless, if you don't have 100% support behind it, whichever way you go, we're gonna run into the same situations we've run into, well, unfortunately on Main Street, and other places where we can't get, a sidewalk doesn't do much good if it doesn't make it the whole way. Asphalt path doesn't do much good if it doesn't make it the whole way. So, and I know we have to put sidewalk in, we're looking at easements, correct? Is that correct? That we, to put sidewalk in,
So we should not need, either way, it can be done within the right of way.
okay, so, yeah, because you're putting in handicap ramps regardless, right?
Some type of ramp is going.
Some places, bike, leisure trails don't require handicap ramps, so, okay, that makes sense then. As far as value, is there, I don't know exactly how to assess value, future value for a sidewalk versus future value for an asphalt path. I don't know if there's ever, do you know of any way that they,
Not specifically, no.
I mean, we're taking care of the asphalt path regardless. We have to take care of it, replace it, maintain it, whatever. And the concrete path would not be ours.
That is correct. An example that was brought forth was the asphalt path between, there behind the, well, it used to be the Duke and Duchess, that runs from Oak Meadow over to, Kona, or.
Yeah, the one there behind the Dollar General.
Yeah, it's not in very good repair.
Is it
I
ours?
honestly didn't know that was ours until about a month ago.
Is it ours?
It's ours.
Okay, so that's shame on us for not maintaining it.
Yes.
That's,
Which makes sense, why, if you're gonna look at that as a resident and see that it's not maintained, then you wouldn't want one of those in your neighborhood.
absolutely, that's exactly true. So, Alan, what's your game plan to maintain that one? What did you probably looked at it.
Yep, I haven't come up with a game plan yet. It was brought up, like I said, a month ago. I haven't really looked at it other than, yep, it needs to be maintained. Potentially that's something we could try and do is throw that in as an option for the ramp, if that's something we wanted to look at. I think that would be probably the best way to address that. Being that I don't think we have any, I'll look and see what other asphalt paths we have as well to see if there's any others that need to be thrown in there. Maybe that could be a separate project where we, gain some value by having a few more things to do than just that, or look at it as part of the ramp.
Okay, so I have one other question. Thinking about this, if it were somebody's preference, I guess I would ask the question, if it's somebody's preference not to have a path or a sidewalk, is neither better than one? That's kind of, I know we had our list of priorities, this is what we were trying to resolve by doing this work, which was one, provide for better travel, keep people from walking down the middle of the road. Drainage was really our third of those things. So the question I guess I would ask is if nobody wants it, are we forcing something on this neighborhood that they don't want? I don't know if that question's been asked.
I don't know that either. Yeah, because I know from the initial discussions, pedestrian safety was definitely part
Absolutely one of the high
that
priorities.
project.
Go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, from when this started, with the residents who were in front of us for 2 years, this was something that was pushed for. And so it appears to me now that we have residents with different opinions than that. So, I mean, initially when we were working on all this, over the time that we've been doing it, it was because it was brought to us, we didn't seek that out.
True.
So, it
Right.
seems to me like there might be some differences amongst, some of the residents.
So I guess I would ask that question, if talking with residents, and I know BJ and you probably both talked to many of them, I guess that's the question to ask, is this a priority?
Well, and it becomes, once you put the concrete in, then it's the residents' responsibility to maintain it. And I can tell you, being downtown in Main Street, that, I trip constantly walking around. I mean, because the residents, some people have newer sidewalks and some, the roots of the trees or whatever have gone up the sidewalks and you can't get through town. So, and that's what happens when we put in the concrete. So I see both sides of it. I see if we see an asphalt path that's not being maintained and the city's supposed to be in charge of it, maybe what's the point of having one if you don't want it to look bad? It's gonna look and you're relying on
That's
the
what I
city
guess
to
I'm-
put it in.
That's
Absolutely.
exactly my thought of it is, you know,
Absolutely, and then
I
at
don't
the
wanna-
same time, put in an asphalt path, it's gonna look beautiful when you put it in, but over time, does it
it takes,
raise or decrease the property when
it
your
takes a
neighbors
lot of work
aren't
to
gonna put
maintain
it,
that.
change
I
it?
can
So, I
attest to
mean,
that.
either way, I don't know what the answer is. I can tell you what it is in my neighborhood when I look around and I wish that
Understand.
it was all the same.
So we have a couple minutes left, and I'm gonna go ahead and save the drainage. What I guess I'm gonna ask is, would you be able to, you know, it's kind of the same idea as the ramp, and I know you've prioritized them in kind of a memo form, but if we could get it, it would be very helpful to see it in kind of a projected spreadsheet of drainage projects. I know we have, I don't know how many we have lots of them, both minor and major. Is that possible to put that, I'm gonna ask for myself, I don't know if it'll help anybody else, but to at least understand kind of where things line up per year?
So the major I've already done, right, I'll give that to you. The minor, honestly, that list is 90% complete with the work that we've done this year. So I can update that, but there's not gonna be a whole lot left on it. So yes, I can do that.
Or maybe just now make one list,
Yeah.
prioritize
Okay.
one large list, and so we can see it, you know.
That would be that'd be very helpful during the budget discussions to understand, you know, what we're talking about for drainage and the years that are in front of us of drain, that we know of now. Could be more after the next couple of months of rain. Go ahead, Steve.
I wanna ask another question about the Oak Meadow sidewalk situation when we're done, so.
We'll go right
You
ahead.
ready? Okay, so I'm sitting here thinking about like, I think that as a resident, would I want a blacktop path in front of my house? I would not, no. I understand the money piece, like I understand the financial, like the difference that it's gonna cost, but I think that the idea is that for me at my house, I'm gonna look out, if I see my sidewalk in disrepair, I have the choice whether or not to maintain it or not to maintain it. And so for the value to go up, it would be, I'm gonna sell my house, I'm gonna hopefully maintain my sidewalk. So I'm kind of trying to think about what, you know, the perspective is on on Oak Meadow is, how do you gauge whether or not the entire street wants one or the other? I mean, are you looking for petitions? How, is that,
Not specifically, that was just, how do we know that? And that was, other than, you know, putting out a survey and hopefully every resident answers it, you know, how do we know? I don't know that answer.
I know that Mr. Rath knows that answer over there.
I
know
do
that they
know the answer.
They do know that answer, but,
And
Like
I
in-
apologize, I got a notice.
I know, and
Cross
we-
country,
unfortunately, we don't
that
have
it's
time
ending
to-
now.
and
because
so
of
we
weather, so I
need
have
to
to
communicate
go.
and figure out,
You guys.
and if it's in the budget, that's the big thing, I mean,
And the difference between asphalt and the concrete is probably only $10,000 from the contract or from the construction side. There would be a little bit of money in the redesign for that, which I'm guessing probably wouldn't be more than $10,000.
so if you don't think it's that big of a price change, then let's ask what, I mean, can we ask what the residents want?
Well, I don't know that that's our,
I agree.
that's not our
That's
call
yours.
on that, because this has gone forward past us as recommending the process. But I think that it's a great question to understand what the impacts are for changing that. For instance, if we're able to if we're able to bid it out as an ornament, for instance, that doesn't cost anything to bid it out as an ornament. You put a section on there and say, hey, we're gonna make a 4-foot path or a 5-foot path, whatever it is. Here's our section, here's our quantity, give us an estimate for it. In lieu of the asphalt path, we want a concrete path.
Right, we have a little bit of design cost in there either way for that.
A little bit, not a lot to put a section on, to put a typical sidewalk, section. I mean, I don't think it's gonna, anyhow, to answer your question, Suzanne, to get that actual number, what is more expensive, what is less expensive, is it possible, is it not possible? And in the meantime, finding out, I know you have and Mel, absolutely,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
no.
I know you
No,
gotta go.
Sorry.
So,
you're fine, I'll put your chair down.
we're almost done anyhow. Mel, do you have anything else you wanted to
I don't.
add to it? Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
At least that wouldn't delay us in the bidding of the project, which is critical to get this out for bid, which is gonna be, what was my last question on that. Is that still, you're still looking at a January to put that out for bid, or when do you believe that can go out for bid?
As soon as we get the easement, we're ready withstanding the, as soon as we get the easement, we've got some final tweaks to the plans, because we didn't make those changes until, the residents agreed to it. But as soon as we get that easement, we would otherwise be ready to go out to bid. So I was hoping to get it in and still use the money that we have booked for 2018, as a fail-safe, we've got it booked for 2019 if we have to.
I guess why I'm asking, you know, bidding is our time to get an accurate number. So if we can get it on there as an alternate, I'm all for that.
Okay.
I'm not saying that we would make that change or we wouldn't make that change, but I think that that's worthwhile at least
Opens up.
making sure. Say you get the easement tomorrow and you can go out for bid in 2 or 3 weeks, or at least put it out for notice and get it out there. At least we were able to put it out as an alternate. That'd be my recommendation, and I think,
Well, then
think- I'm not gonna speak for Mel,
How do we know when
but-
it gets changed? Like, what's the decision process, whether, I mean, it's in there, so that's
well, I think
great.
the decision process would be, okay, we get our bids in, let's say it's $2,000 difference. And we can, you know, it's very minor, the difference in cost. Then we can evaluate, you know, intelligently, what's our
So you have
cost
options,
to
you
do
have
that.
option A and B.
If it comes in and it's $25,000 different, well, then we have a different discussion.
Okay. The consideration, I appreciate it.
What's it?
I was asking Scott if the drainage changed, whether we had the path of the sidewalk, and for some reason I thought there was something that changed if we changed those, but I don't know what that would be specifically.
Well, and those are the kind of things that we need to see if there's anything else, and I can't think of anything that would be necessarily different, as long as it's roughly the same width, roughly the same thickness, surface, you know, you're not putting it in an easement, you don't have to do something different, like you don't have a different, you know, curb ramp, you're putting the same curb ramp in. Although, the path width, what is the asphalt path width? Is that
8 foot,
8? So that would change some details.
it'd be 3 foot narrower, right?
Yeah, it would change some details on your grading, and it would change some details on your handicap ramps.
Right.
It could change your location for some inlets, depending.
Yeah, and that's what I
I
was
don't-
trying to remember, I don't know specifically, but it might.
Yeah. Maybe it's minor, maybe it's not. Okay. Alrighty. I think that's at least worthwhile, and obviously you can check with BJ, but I would suggest, you know, bidding as an alternate
Okay.
when we do get to go out to a bid. Anything else, Suzanne?
No.
Speed limit sign on Columbia Road at the bridge.
They just took it out.
They just took it out. That was a great way of fixing that problem, just remove it. You're gonna need something coming southbound? No. Yeah, southbound.
I saw that. last
Southbound
week.
there in that location, you're gonna need something, because you've got one posted as you come on to Columbia going north.
Yes.
So, I don't know if we have the capability of doing it ourselves, or if it's just easier for us to do it than deal with ODOT, I would recommend that.
I think at this point, that's gonna be the easiest thing to do, and I noticed that last week, and I have not talked to Jason about it yet, so I will write that down right now.
All right. Suzanne,
I'm good.
motion to adjourn?
Second. Walther,
Yes,
Mrs. Carter is left. Hayes?
Yes.
thank you.
I know we ran out of time, but the last thing that I gave you